Hey, greetings everyone. It is GleeCon, and I am back with you once again for another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode of World of Warcraft, we took old Kelly, the human priest, and while she's trying to get ready for Deadmines also, she's kind of taking a different path. She's not in Red Ridge like everyone else, so she was kind of doing her own thing in Stonetail, and we just sort of did a couple little random quests around Stormwind and just kept doing her thing. Really, a small quest chain had her bopping around between Stormwind and Elwyn Forest and Red Ridge and ended up taking most of her hour. But she is ready, as are the rest of all of our characters, to do dungeons starting on the next loop. So on the next episode, after this one, we'll be ready to do the Deadmines. We've also been reading the Alliance Player's Guide, which is one of the last books in the Dungeons & Dragons World of Warcraft role-playing game series. We're going to be on the last chapter today, so stay a while and listen as we jump into chapter 10. It's called Adventures, and if it's anything like the Horde Player's Guide, it's going to be 3 adventures that we sort of just go through. We're not going to obviously read every single little part, but we're going to get the gist of it, and we'll read the story, the kind of the lore, whatever lore elements exist. So here we go. The first one is called The Dog of Warcraft. Okay, so this is a quest for 7th level heroes, any Alliance race. The background it takes place in the Eltarak Mountains. Captain Aratane Nerys is a human paladin who fought in the Third War. After the conflict ended, Aratane returned to his home in the Eltarak Mountains with a small group of loyal soldiers. These men and women were unwilling to put aside their hatred of the Horde, and over the past 2 years, others who feel the same have joined them. Xenophobes. Continuing Horde presence in Eltarak and bases such as Terran Mill embitter these people even more. Now Aratane leads a small band of bigots and cutthroats. They move from place to place, establishing camps where Aratane feels they can fight the Horde most effectively. They see all Horde members as evil creatures, including orcs who observe the truce between the Horde and the Alliance. Since he doesn't have the numbers to mount an assault, Aratane vows to cripple the orcs in the Eltarak region and drive them from his homeland by any means necessary. Any means includes the systematic slaughter of the few griffins that live in the Eltarak Mountains, which he believes orcs and trolls are training to use as mounts, and poisoning the wells near every Horde settlement, no matter how small, which has allowed poison to seep into the Alliance water supplies. Okay, so this dude's evil. Clearly, Aratane no longer walks in the light. He is a bandit chief, and his actions damage relations between the Alliance and the Horde. Something must be done about him, and the PCs are the ones to do it. Okay, so it does say that there should be at least one, basically warrior paladin equivalent, because there will be some duels in this. The heroes arrive in the Eltarak area on an errand to find Aratane, because some people think that he is protecting the Alliance and he's still a do-gooder, but that he's kind of strayed from the best path, because he's decided the Third War is not over. He's going to still win. He's going to still beat the Horde. He's even killing merchants who trade with the Horde, like neutral goblins and stuff like that. There will be an encounter with a dying griffin, a dead druid, and soldiers who are murdering orcish women and children. So those will be some of the kind of encounters that you can get XP for doing. If they agree to help, they become embroiled in internecine. Is that how you say that word? I don't know. Violence between Aratane and the town of Hillsbrad. If they oppose Aratane, they discover there is a renegade warlock subtly manipulating him. Spoiler. For the heroes. The adventure begins in the Eltarak Mountains. The heroes could be in Eltarak for any number of the following reasons. They can be there to finish the traitor. Basically, the Alliance knows that Aratane's a criminal and they've been sent after him. They can be there as an investigation because there's been some reports of murdered griffins, and a druid named Samaldar sent a message saying, hey, nests and eggs are destroyed, and now the druid has stopped reporting. There could be a ghostly griffin if one of the heroes is a druid or a wildhammer dwarf who keeps having a vision of this griffin that's obviously in distress. Or, hello, old friend, one of the heroes served with Aratane in the last war, and he's kind of sent a call out to the heroes, and they come like hey, old buddy. And then they get there, they're like, oh, my old buddy's a freaking psycho now. So then the region itself, Alterac Valley, is part of Lordaeron. It consists of fertile fields and hills. And in the valley, there are a presence of Crush Ridge ogres in Gallows Corner. Here we have a map of the region. Here's Hillsbrad, which is where we are right now with our Warlock, and the South Shore. We're kind of in this region. This is the quest. The Hinterlands, here's Terran Mill. We actually walked there on one of our last episodes. His camp is sort of off to the side of Terran Mill. He's probably fighting that. Here's a massacre site, a dead druid site. This is basically where your encounters will occur. Deadly Waters, Eagles Eyrie. The Crush Ridge ogres are one of the most active of the enemies to this guy's camp, especially in the winter when they kind of stream out of that little area of the ruins and attack him. And he's been reporting, at best an exaggeration, that they are a major threat to the region. And he needs to just defeat them, among other things, to keep this path open into the Plaguelands. If the heroes decide to go up that way, they're going to have to fight ogres as well. The town of Hillsbrad is a large farming community. It looks like it's level 5. I don't remember what those stand for. MCO, CCO, I think it has to do with like what type of community they are. Governed by Magistrate Burnside, they want to peacefully coexist, but it is a constant battle with Terran Mill. Hillsbrad was always a rival to the farm towns where Aratane grew up, and that rivalry has turned into enmity. Aratane's open contempt for Hillsbrad is reciprocated. Some worry that Aratane may attempt to force out Magistrate Burnside and take control of the town and make that its base. So he's really fighting a war on two fronts. There's also a mysterious sickness affecting the people of Hillsbrad. It's probably coming from the poisoned water. They will give 500 GP to anyone that can figure out where the plague is coming from. South Shore is another alliance city and port, and sea turtles kind of populate off the coast, which is, I guess, maybe a quest where you could kill some to eat some delicious turtle bisque. And similarly, he's having beef with South Shore. He calls it a smelly fish port. Little sidebar, as the wise woman says in Hillsbrad, mark my words, there's no peace in that man's heart. When a man turns himself into a dog of war, it is almost impossible to become a hound of peace. Terran Mill is the major horde stronghold, level 12. It's much stronger than these towns. Well, South Shore is a level 10, so I guess if you combine the two, they are they're a match for Terran Mill. Terran Mill's is the biggest horde threat in the region, and ultimately that's what Aratane wants. He wants to destroy Terran Mill. But so far, Aratane has eluded them, even though they send forces against him. If the heroes approach Terran Mill, they don't openly attack them, but a raiding party will intercept them, and they're not interested in parley. So they'll basically intercept, say, get the heck out. So if in the region, while progressing around, at any point in time, they could encounter random encounters, and there's a random encounter table of there. Mostly just mobs. Okay, so the first part of this adventure is the journey. No matter why they're here, they're going to have to journey across Alterac Mountains. The first encounter is a level 3. They'll encounter the last Griffin of Alterac. Your trek has turned into a bit of a mountaineering expedition as you find yourself climbing some deceptively steep hills. A sudden cloudburst catches you as you approach from the bottom edge of a bluff. As you take shelter from the rain at the base of the bluff, you hear an odd cry like an eagle imitating a sick crow originating from a ledge 40 feet above you. On the ledge, flies swarm around a pair of dead griffin hatchlings. Their mother, whose neck is drooped and whose eyes are milky white, is standing over her chicks, crowing mournfully and occasionally nudging them with her beak in the vain hope that they're still alive. Oh, so they are sick, blind, and really there's no point to fight them. So the challenge is climbing up there, seeing them, and perhaps healing them, or determining at least what's wrong with it. All right, the second encounter is Deadly Waters. This doesn't have an encounter level, so it's probably easy. The idyllic scene of this mountain pool is disturbed by a grim sight. This is if you continue climbing above the nest. A pair of year-old griffins lie dead near the water, and nearly a half-dozen dead eagles litter the ground, crows picking at their remains. They can, if you succeed, you'll be able to tell that this water has been plagued by plague bolt, which is an ingested poison. What happened to Samaldar? Worried that Samaldar could track his movements, Eritane ordered one of his men to kill the druid, Balin, which is a 3rd level warrior. A farmhand who had been a pupil of Samaldar's paid him a friendly visit. Oh, terrible. They had a pleasant conversation when the druid decided to have a rest. The former student promised that he'd watch over him. Once the druid fell asleep, however, Balin calmly slit his throat and returned to Eritane. Balin didn't take his items because he feared they could be magically traced. Terrible. It says that the Forsaken couriers carry messages. So it's possible that you might start thinking the Forsaken did this. But if you could also intercept one of these Forsaken messages and find out what's actually said, is that at this point in time, they could do some reconnaissance, fight some Forsaken, and figure out Eritane is the one that has stolen this poison. Okay, back to the encounter. It's an encounter level 7 to encounter the dead druid talked about. This is an ivy-covered earthen hut. 10 feet tall, 20 feet in diameter, surrounded by 6 10-foot tall standing stones. A chirruping comes within, mainly because there is a trap. 6 silver dire wolves will enter if they don't say the word of friendship. When they're summoned, they're also surrounded by stinging insects, which will make the fight extra hard. You could destroy the stones, which would dispel the insects. And the wolves will also howl, trying to get them to leave. At this point, they could also be negotiated with if you have someone that can do that sort of thing. Otherwise, they use pack tactics and try to take out the weakest link. Inside the hut is a 20-foot diameter open area, which looks to have been a sleeping and living quarters. Ivy lines the interior walls, and the floor is a bed of thick leaves. Small perforations in the ceiling allow tiny songbirds to enter and exit. Dozens of songbirds are inside the hut, and their chirps create an odd, sad harmony, a druid's dirge. Lying still and peaceful on a bed of leaves is a night elf in a green robe. His throat has been slit from ear to ear. There's no sign of a struggle. Terrible. There is some treasure here if you do some searching, and you could find that there's some gold covered by golden leaves, some money. It's actually a money tree. It's a literal money tree. The leaves are gold coins. They grow gold coins. Interesting. There's also a nice magical cloak of resistance. Okay, the 4th encounter is the Massacre. This is a level 8 encounter. There's a small orc village and a pitched battle between Eritane's forces and the Horde took place, in which the Horde lost. A young orc woman cradling an infant orc in her arms is pursued by half a dozen armed humans. She stumbles and falls over a tree branch and is too exhausted to continue her flight, so you're going to walk in on this battle occurring. The humans close on her. The leader is an overweight man in plate mail with black hair and a cruel smile. The men laugh and trade cruel jokes about dead orc babies as they prepare to strike down the woman. The Alliance symbols on the soldiers' tabards have been smeared with tar or mud, and another vague shape imposed over it that looks like a burning torch. Terrible. It's footmen and a knight, and if they rescue the orc woman, she's afraid, and her name is Nauga, but she pretty much just wants to go back to her pig farm. But the pig farm has already been destroyed by Eritane. So basically you're going to have to either let this massacre happen, which is horrific for heroes to do, or you're going to be fighting Alliance members, quote-unquote Alliance. Okay, the 5th encounter is called Poison at Hillsbrad. The heroes might hear that there is a plague within Hillsbrad, and there is a stream that has been poisoning the town. You've come across a motley crew of orcs huddled around a campfire. They look too sick to do anything. That's if you follow the poison stream up. You can basically find a sickened orc encampment. They're suspicious, but yes, sick. And they can tell how they also are being affected equally by the fact that the stream is completely poisoned. They can also continue to trace the stream back up into a poisoned stream, just as the one we read by the Griffins. Okay, so all of those things you would imagine would let the heroes know that something rotten is afoot, and there's a good chance they'll know that Eritane is behind it. Part 2 is called The Mad Bandit. So Aretane's current encampment is on the eastern slopes of the Alterac Mountains, disturbingly close to the Horde stronghold of Terran Mill, and has been there a couple weeks, longer than normal, and he plans to move again soon. He's a strong, hale man with long, well-groomed black hair, a little bit of gray, and he is dressed in the trappings of a paladin. When the heroes approach, an encampment squats on the hillside that is surrounded on 3 sides by a crude wooden palisade, 10 feet high, and on the 4th side by a sheer cliff face. He has several dozen bandit followers. Most of them are out raiding caravans and farms and stuff like that, but there will be at least 25 with him at the time. All of them, including Aratane himself, will be outfitted in stolen military goods. So they look like they're alliance, but they're not really. So getting in the camp is an encounter level 7. A crude wooden gate bars the way. 1 guard is visible on the top of the tower. The banner of the burning torch red against black flies above it. There is a wooden gate protecting the encampment. Footmen are stationed at the gate. If they openly approach, there's some suspicion, but because occasionally new recruits will come up and try to join them, they don't automatically attack. They just want them. They give the heroes an opportunity to explain themselves. So this is the different potential paths, and of course, anybody that's played D&D, who the hell knows what they'll actually do. If they just try to fight their way in, they're going to be fighting a few bandits, and every 5 rounds, a few more will come. And every now and then, some of them are elites, basically captains, until you have taken down all 25. So you can just slowly kill them all until eventually you'll have to fight the hero, Aratane, and his priest sidekick in a showdown. If they use diplomacy, and even perhaps with advantage if they act like they are potential recruits, they're unfriendly, but they will escort them to a conversation with Aratane. If they're like, hey, we're friends, they'll have to try bluff, but the same thing. If they try to say, hey, we need rescue from the Horde, same kind of deal, but now, again, they're going to be bluffing, and then they're going to really be expected to kind of almost be servile. If they try to sneak in or espionage their way in, they could come around the back, and they'll have an opportunity, like if they wait for the right time at night, they're carousing and gambling, which will reduce the odds to 1 in 10, so there'll only be a few alert guards instead of the whole 25. Or you can straight up do a paladin challenge, and you can call him out for a duel. And the quote would be, while the Knights of Stormwind polish their armor and engage in ridiculous errands that they dare to call quests, the solid, dependable folk of Alterac are fighting for their lives and homes in the real war. And he's happy to duel. He's happy to have that type of battle. All right, so now we're going to describe the camp itself. The encampments, however you get in there. Tents and grounds are fighting a battle against grime and disorder. It looks like someone's attempting to enforce discipline and cleanliness on these people, but it's not having much success. Men and women move about lazily. Their hard faces, unwashed bodies, stained clothing, and weapons display their cutthroat natures. And here, before we can... So it says that the camp has a bunch of just tents and common bandits. There's always guards at the entrance to Aratane's tent, just because he likes the feel of power. So before we continue describing the camp, let's look at 2 sidebars. One, his sidekick, or his number 2, Syndrason Nerys, which is the level 8. He's actually a good priest. He's his younger brother, so he also serves the light, obviously in a priestly capacity. He's always kind of been in the shadow of his brother, and he does support his brother pretty much no matter what. But he thinks bro's starting to go crazy, and he doesn't really know what to do because brother Aratane will knock him around. He is not aware of the poisons. He's not hip to the plot. He does know pretty much about the massacres and the murdering of the druids, so he's kind of knows most of it, but not all of it. If they tell him specifically about the assassination, then he's going to sort of stand back and let the heroes do what they need to do. He will tell how he used to be a good man, though. So it's kind of the role of the brother is he could make the fight much harder. You could use a little tact to have him step back, and he also will add some humanism to the villain, which every good villain needs. In the treasure, if you manage to get this far, in his actual camp, he does have 5 chests with lots of gold. He does have the preserved head of a brigand named Darius Glon, which can be turned in for a gold bounty to Theramore. So that's an interesting little bonus side quest. There's also preserved orc nails. He rips their nails out. Disgusting. And there's a list of names on a bloody parchment that are previous men who served with them. So these could basically be like breadcrumbs to further campaign stuff. There's also a chest full of the Forsaken poison. So like the damning evidence is in there. Okay, so that's all straightforward. However, the campaign does kind of veer off a little bit if you do come in as a friend. So if you come in as a friend, and you're not really a friend, when he finally comes out to meet you, he's going to order you killed. But if you are a true friend, he invites you to kind of come in, eat, drink, be part of the band. There's a guy named Soph who's a distant relative of Aratane and one of his best captains who's jealous of the affection. So then you'll start to have an antagonistic rival in that sense. He will try to get you drunk and try to duel him when you are kind of disadvantaged in that sense. Eventually, though, he's going to you're going to be put to a true moral ultimatum where he will capture a traveling merchant who's essentially just a neutral dude, and because he has sold things to the Horde, he's going to require you to join in the torturing of the squad of this dude. So that's going to be kind of a flashpoint moment where you're going to have to completely abandon your morals to keep up the charade, or things will shift at that point in time. But that will make it more likely that his bro will step back. And ultimately, one of the most probably gratifying and likely ways that this scenario ends is in a duel, which is an encounter level 7 duel. He demands that each of the duelists fights with a normal non-magic long sword and shield and chain shirt, which is why a warrior is necessary. He doesn't want any magic or buffs going on because he doesn't want any dishonor. Here's the flavor text. Aratane turns to the gathered crowd and cries, "Behold this self-righteous philosopher. This whelp wishes to punish me for the crime of saving your lives and doing what was necessary to make sure the butchers didn't make a meal of you for their pet wolves' bellies. Well, I spit upon her or him, upon Stormwind, upon Theramore, and upon any power on Azeroth that stands against our survival." He turns to you. "You are an orc in my sight. I shall cut you down like any crawling creature of the Horde and take joy in your slaughter." And then they give his stat block. So, if the hero who challenged is died, then it becomes an all-out melee. They could potentially be captured, and then you'll have to do a whole other quest where goblins come and free them. However, if the duel is won, you're still going to have to go into an all-out melee, but perhaps you can get some like intimidation checks and stuff like that. And Sindrason could get involved, the brother, to calm him down. You can kind of roleplay that kind of as you want. Does the team seem like they're up for an all-out melee? Maybe the rest of the team's jealous of that, or do we want to end it with like roles for communication? In the journal, Sindrason, the brother, will finally understand that his brother was the villain, that he's been having nightmares, the false prophecies, and one entry in particular stands out. And here's that final flavor entry. "Again, the fevers of prophecy have afflicted me and enlightened me. Orc warlocks, riding the griffins of the Alterac Mountains, hurled scorching fire into the fields, and none was left to defend the land, for I was in shackles. At Terran Mill, 5 mighty horns sounded. When each horn blew, a great host marched across the land, each greater than all the enemies of the last war combined. 1 orc host, 1 ogre, 1 undead, 1 troll, and finally a flight of dragons, the likes of which no one has ever seen. I beheld the council chambers of the weak peoples of Hillsbrad and Southshore, and cursed the truth that allowed the hordes of Durotar to nurse their strength. From Lochmadon to Dalaran, the land burned, and horde banners were as plentiful as trees in a dense forest. The fist of the thrall who is now king hung poised over Stormwind, and then I awoke cursing my slumber. Further investigation will lead to a scourge necromancer / warlock, or a troll named Nazarul, who is trying to build a war between the humans and the orcs, and those things lead to the plague lands. So there's definitely a major adventure hook. Will we get one of those? Probably not, but maybe. Chances are we have 2 more adventures to go. So that was the first one in the books. In the pipe, as we say on this show. All right, so second quest is called Gift for the Bride. This is a nice level 1 quest. Anyone can do it. After Dalen Proudmoore's attack on Durotar, many soldiers from his forces settled in Theramore. Though Jaina offered them amnesty, many still harbored a deep hatred for Dalen's treacherous daughter. Recently, a group of these people under the leadership of the mage Rober Ron left the city of Theramore done with the Alliance. They believed the guerrilla attacks on Theramore could give the citizens courage to turn against Jaina Proudmoore, bring her down, then focus the city's aggression toward the Horde where it really belongs. Knowing their handful of magi and warriors are no match for Theramore, the defectors traveled south through Dustwallow Marsh to seek out the black dragon spawn Madagon. Or Madagon? I like Madagon. Who also wishes to see, it's probably Madagon, who also wishes to see the Alliance vacate the island of Theramore. The defectors promise that after the Alliance, under their leadership, crushes the Horde, it will take Durotar and Mulgore and live there, leaving all of Dustwallow Marsh to the Black Dragon flight. Madagon agreed to work with the soldiers, likely with his own nefarious agenda to manipulate their desires. He armed them with several magic items which he insisted be returned after their use. He warned that they should not be wasted. The defectors established a hideout in a cavern network in the hills north of Theramore. On the edge of Dustwallow Marsh, many of them serve as spies and continue to move in and out of the city, posing as messengers, travelers, or adventurers, but they always return to the caves. The defectors constantly watch for ways to destabilize the Alliance, and now they've discovered a chance. An Ironforge veteran of some prestige is getting married, and the wedding looks to be a gathering of who's who in Theramore's society and military circles, including Jaina Proudmoore. The ballroom is packed and ripe for assassination. So it sounds like for the second quest, we're fighting Alliance. We're doing internal fighting. So the heroes represent employers or patrons at the wedding of 2 different veterans. During the wedding, a group of humans will attempt to assassinate Jaina and teleport away. We must then go investigate the Black Dragon flight or see if Dalen's soldiers are having anything to do with it. This will lead to a system of caves where they enter to seek answers. Mostly you're going to fight humans, but you can find some Black Dragon flight, probably little whelplings. There is Shalrath of Black Wormkin and a daughter of Madigan who is working with the human leader, probably the boss. After they encounter these characters, the heroes hear that more soldiers have arrived as backup, and so have dragons. Madigan is displeased that the soldiers failed in their assassination attempt, and he has sent his dragon allies to deal with the remaining defectors. The dragonflight likely does not notice the heroes, but puts on an impressive display, because obviously you wouldn't be able to fight them at level 1. For the heroes, it begins at the barracks. They can be there for any number of reasons. Their patron could have rewarded them by sending them to the wedding, could have sent them there to learn diplomacy, because remember, you guys are noobs. They might be related to the bride or groom. They might be spies themselves or emissaries. They might be there to glean information, or they could just be party crashers like the Wedding Crashers movie. Look at those. That is that's goofy artwork. It's okay. Obviously, it's probably better than I can draw, but it is that elf in particular on the right is, I don't know what they were going for. All right, so the reception takes place in the Grand Mess Hall at the Theramore Barracks. Even people that live there don't recognize it because it's been like completely revamped for this wedding. The drinks flow and laughter and merriment surround you, but many tables have been removed to make room for dancing. The west wall holds a table piled high with gifts, the wrapping paper indicating the gifts come from many different cultures. Along the north wall sit the happy couple, Sta in her dress military uniform, white fur-lined vest and white leather breeches, her red hair loose hanging around her waist, and Pelican, wearing black clothing as a counterpoint to his new wife. A servant wanders by and offers you another mug of ale. They may notice that there are a group that are holding beers but not drinking, if you're really being observant. You can also see, if you use Detect Magic, that some of the gifts are magic. You can also, if you use Detect Evil, detect that one of the gifts is evil. If you are going about actively gathering information, you can learn that this is a respected couple. Especially the dwarves respect them. And some former soldiers of Dalen Proudmoore have been fomenting unrest. So because of that, his soldiers are tense, and a dwarf named Red Snout Grisling has been missing. The three suspicious humans near the gift table are rude, do not like to be conversed with, but they don't fight unless like someone breaks out a fight with them. You can also learn, if you're really good at with a really like a 20 check, that Jaina is worried that the Black Dragonflight is somehow involved. Okay, so basically allow that role-playing to go on and information to gathering to go on as long as your party is fit. So if your people are good at role-playing and have a good time with it, awesome. If your team needs a lot more guidance, you'll drop the breadcrumbs if your party that you play with. Dwarves begin clapping and stamping their feet to call for the couple to open their presents. The gruff dwarves guarding the table deliver the gifts one by one. Considerable cheering rises at each gift, and you can tell the couple is having a ball. All focus in the room rests on the bride and groom. Jaina Proudmoore and her guards stand nearby. Sta, the bride, hefts a large present wrapped in black paper. To the happy couple, she calls, reading the card, and the people applaud again. The moment she reaches into the box, you see what looks to be something made of black obsidian. Then a bright flash fills the room, blinding you. Shouts and screams echo. As you regain your sight, you see that one large human man, blade bared, leap toward Jaina. Her guards close about her, and Sta, the bride, steps in front of him, blinking. The human cuts her down and makes for Jaina. One guard sweeps his sword from its scabbard and in the same motion hacks halfway into the murderer's neck. He chokes and sinks. Pandemonium. The groom bends over his wife and shakes her shoulders, but she slumps over the gift and doesn't move. A human woman, one who had been standing next to the would-be assassin earlier, darts forward and pulls the gift from the bride's still hands, and then he is gone. Two more humans yell, "There he goes," and dash out of the exit, bumping your table along the way, and the room reels with chaos. So you can check for the death. Most likely the bride's dead. Jaina and everybody kind of checks around, stops people from leaving, questions people. There's a lieutenant named Odic Match. He starts interviewing the heroes. After about 30 minutes to an hour, Jaina addresses the crowd. Here we have a map, and we can see that what we're about to read is there are 14, it looks like 14 rooms that we're going to be covering here over the next few pages. Something terrible has happened here today. Both Pelican and the Alliance suffered a loss, and I will see that it does not go unpunished. She turns to her guards. Find a group to head south to Black Dragonflight territory. We need someone to see what's going on down there. The dragons are behind this, I'm sure. The people who fled this room did not have this kind of power at their disposal. The guards nod and leave. The nobility falls into small groups that converse quietly, and after a few minutes, Lieutenant Match emerges and approaches you. Hello again. Many of our best officers are on assignment, and, as you heard, we just sent more off to the south of Dustwallow Marsh. We can't leave the city undefended, so it appears we're somewhat short-handed. Would you care to investigate those people you saw escape? We think they're members of a disenfranchised cult or group, I don't know, something. Anyway, we're fairly sure where they're hiding, we just didn't think it was worth investigating. He frowns. There will be a reward if you can bring the assassins to justice. Bring them back alive or bring us their heads. I don't care which. And then they give him a map. Okay. So this will be a nice little level 1 dungeon. In the swamp. Not fun. The many bogs have soaked your boots and your hair is tacky from the drizzle. You see a black shape flying overhead, but you can't make it out through the fog. It looks to be heading southwest and pays you no heed. You trudge on, peering through the fog, and a shadow catches your eye as you spot a small crevice in the hills, a cave, which is your destination. Smoke rises from the hills and mixes with the fog, and you can smell an acrid scent on the air. So there are very few doors, but they're just normal doors. They are pretty regular sized ceilings, maybe a little high. And because this is the level 1 dungeon, this is a nice, well lit, torch laden dungeon. Okay, so the first room is a stable. The cave has a wide opening and you can comfortably fit inside. Several torches in sconces like the cave. It seems to serve as a half stable, half armory. Formerly brightly colored rugs near the entrance are coated with mud and grass, and 5 horses are tethered to the wall, standing on dried straw with bundles of grass and hay stacked neatly on the left-hand wall. A tunnel leads from the wall directly opposite on the right side, apparently just returning as a human man removing traveling gear. That's just a regular soldier. And at any point in time, instead of fighting, you can use intimidate or diplomacy to learn that these defectors did plot the assassination. That there are about 30 people here, but a little bit less than half are out getting supplies, and that they are working with the Black Dragon flight. This one soldier in the stables will just fight you, but he will also shout for assistance. There's also a pressure plate trap in the floor of the stables that will shoot a poison dart at the heroes. Okay, this second area is the Magi's Chambers. This is a much harder area, encounter level 3. This room has been set up to mimic a fine chamber within a mage's home. 2 alchemist tables stand against the wall, and a variety of potions and stones sit on a bookshelf. 2 human women dressed in black robes lined with white fur are conversing at one table, apparently arguing about some liquid in a vial between them. The Magi pretty much, unless people have been sneaking around, just jump up and start shooting magic at them. They have some spells, magic missile, things like that. They also like Moonglaive. Interesting. One is a buffer, one will be an offensive caster. Area 3 is the kitchen. The hallway opens up to a large cave well lit with torches. It contains several, this is also encounter level 3. Several tables and chairs enough to seat maybe 8 people. On the far wall, a rabbit roasts over a large pit, the smoke issuing out of a hole in the ceiling. Another pot hangs over the fire, bubbling and hissing. One human man tends the fire. Another sits at a table near him, chatting and laughing. These are just, they're distracted, so you can easily sneak and surprise them. And other than, they're just a couple soldiers. I don't know why that's an encounter level 3. Other than that, it's 2 of them. You should be able to kind of take them down, I think, pretty easily. The storage room is the 4th room. It is locked, but if you can either get the key from Rober or pick the lock. The wooden door swings open easily into a small 10 by 10 room. Cobbled together shelves reach the ceiling and hold stores of dried meat, cheese, wheat, other supplies. Barrels of wine sit to the left of the door, while empty water skins are on the front of the shelving and nothing else of interest. You pick the lock, that's annoying. Unless they want food, you can get rations. Area 5 is the refuse room. The first thing that hits you when you open this door is the smell. Death, filth, decay. The room has a scent that is almost tangible. A little bit of light from the hall shows several bodies. Mostly those of giant spiders, raptors, and even a few cows. Some of the animals are cleaned of meat. Others lie bloated with all the flesh left to rot. And a fat, humanoid hand with stubby fingers sticks out from underneath a giant spider's body. If they go further in, it's just complete stank. You have to completely make nausea saving throws. But you could find old red snout Grizzling, that missing dwarf that they heard about. He has a letter on him saying he has discovered the threat. And he has a ring around his neck, which a savvy hero would use as proof that they did find him. Area 6 is the study, also level 3. The door is cracked open. Inside you can hear low discussion. Through the door you can spy 2 couches and a roaring fire. Another wooden door on the wall beside the fireplace is closed. 2 robed humans chat on the sofa with their backs to the door. If they listen at the door, they can also hear, "He will not be pleased." Was the item returned? Yes, it's going back into storage. He's going to need to charge it again before we can use it to get to Proudmoore. As I said, he will not be pleased. Did you get a chance to see it before it was shipped? Yes, it hurt my eyes. It makes me nervous having it here. Even discharged. Even then, because that means he sends more here. They're arrogant. They want to prove themselves, so they don't even ask for help. They want to take you down. However, if you can kind of like smite them without killing them, you can get a little bit more information out of intimidation, and you can learn basically what we just overheard. They will go so far as to admit, if you get a 20 intimidate, that Madagan in the Black Dragon Spawn is their patron, and he's probably on the way. And they admit to killing the dwarf for sticking his nose where they don't belong. He challenged the King of Sky, which is Sky Kenthal. And what we don't know, but you're getting to know, is that this guy's an alias of the renegade leader Roberon. Okay, Area 7 is the library. Again, locked or can be entered with a key. This cave has bookshelves 10 feet high, filled with books of all sorts. Wooden planks cover the walls, giving the illusion of it being a room inside of a building. A cushy chair sits in the middle of the room in the midst of the books. I don't think we're going to have... I think there's only going to be 2 adventures if you're just looking at the page count. Because we're only halfway through the dungeon right now. There are just blank spellbooks in here. The sleeping quarters. This is an easier encounter level 1. It's got a door, but it's unlocked. The soldiers might hear him, and if he does, because they're not sneaking, he'll just be like trying to get armored up when they walk in. This cave is a sleeping area. Furry rugs cover the floor, making the dank cave lose some of its clammy feeling. 8 cots line the walls, piled with cotton sheets and puffy comforters. From the light of the one torch, you can see that one bed is occupied. Tufts of golden hair peek out from under the sheet. He's on night watch, so I guess that's the guy. There are small chests with some scrolls and gems and a little tiny onyx dragon statue. Scrolls cure light wounds. Okay, and we can interrogate Shanna. I don't know who Shanna is. Let's find out. Maybe the sidebar will tell us. If the heroes capture Shanna, like the sleeping guard, I'm guessing that's what it is. It takes nothing more than a DC 10 intimidate or 15 diplomacy to get her talking. She's proud, seemingly slightly mad mage, and the heroes find out she was honored to be sent to the traitor city of Theramore to assassinate Jaina Proudmoore. She's not alone in her zeal. More defectors lie in wait in the city, prepared to strike at any time. She says nothing about her masters, only that the Sky King has much to say to the intruders, which are the heroes. He may, Shanna warns, leave one of them alive in order to alert the Alliance as to who is responsible for its downfall. Shanna is also charismatic and an inspiring speaker. She's responsible for recruiting many magi to her cause, which is why so many of them have joined the defectors. I don't know who Shanna is, where we encounter her. Let's see. That's what we're coming up on. So that's who we're about to talk about here in Area 9, which is the second sleeping quarters. Also unlocked. Shanna is in here. She is now without gloves, and she has a black ring on her left thumb. Gross. Much like the other room, no offense to those that wear thumb rings, but maybe really think long and hard about why. Much like the other room, this area is clearly a sleeping area. A small table sits beyond the 8 beds, and 2 humans are deeply engrossed in a card game. Although she wears no gloves now, you recognize one of them as the woman who disappeared with the deadly present at the wedding reception. Okay, and they discussed what would happen if you interrogate her. But you might also have to fight her. There's a third sleeping quarters unlocked. A 4-poster bed sits against the far wall with privacy hangings closed. Beautiful fabric weavings cover the walls near the bed, setting it apart from the rest of the cave, which contains 10 cots. One of the smaller cots is occupied. You get to sleep in like a baller bed while everyone snores around you in tiny beds. I feel like that's like a dad on vacation with his kids. There is a chest in there with an amulet of natural armor as well. Nobody's actually in here. The people aren't in here sleeping right now. All right, Area 11 is a personal storage closet. This room is dimly lit by the torchlight from the bedroom. It is small, about 10 by 10. The walls are crude and the ceiling low, as if it had been carved from stone recently. The floor is littered with stone and dust. A weapons rack holding a longsword and an axe sits against the far wall against a closed basket. They're just masterwork. They don't even do that nowadays, but I think masterworks get like +1 to hit, but not damage. And they're not technically magic. It is trapped with a burning hand spell, though. You open it, and you can get some fire on you. Area 12 is Shalrath's chamber. You can feel the palpable heat against your face as a deep fire pit smolders in the middle of this room. The coals glow brightly and are the room's only illumination. Several items are piled against the wall, and they look to be weapons. It's actually an odd assortment of spider legs. And amidst them, if you check, you can find a fine dwarven axe. I do wish they kind of brought that back, because I feel like nowadays the campaigns I play, it's, unless you make it yourself, it's so hard to get like useful magic items. They're just not very common. There's a fusillade of dart traps as well on a pressure plate. Area 13 is the King of the Sky. This room is much larger than the others and contains little more than a carved wooden throne inlaid with gold. A high elf sits upon that throne, arguing with a being that looks to be a cross between a human and a horrid scaly black quadruped. That's this setup, maybe? They argue loudly, their speech interrupted by oaths and hisses. The high elf is actually Rober Rowan, using disguised self. He's really human, because he wants to keep his name unblemished. They're basically bickering over the failed assassination attempt. If they don't try to conceal themselves, Shalrath will kind of back off to assess the threat, while the High Elf will come out and say, I am the King of the Sky, and I welcome you to my throne room. If they don't attack immediately, he will basically say what his vision for the new alliance should be, and if they want to join him, he will take them. Otherwise, he will, or Shalrath will then try to slip into a secret room behind one of the wall hangings, so you'll have a chance to detect his stealth. But if they want to do anything other than talk, he's going to fight he and his black weasel familiar. Here's a cool little dragon. And that will kind of be your boss fight. It looks like Shalrath is not going to join in unless you enter Area 14, the secret storage room. And there you'll have to fight Shalrath, because that's as far as she can retreat. There is a treasure chest in there. Shalrath will just try to go after whoever the strongest person is, and if she's losing, she'll try to run. It does have a black dragon assassination statue, so that has no charges left, and some masterwork weapons. Endgame. After the battle, they go to the entrance and find out that there is a sound of battle out front. As you head towards the cave entrance, you hear roaring and screaming. Outside, you see a massive black dragon carrying screaming humans into the sky. Abruptly, their screams stop and the dragon drops them, their bodies crashing and breaking on the ground. This dragon has come from Madagan. He's not Madagan himself. He just wants to kill these humans because they screwed up. They should try to stay out of it, because level 1 characters cannot kill a black drake even, including his whelp allies. They should probably just hide and watch the carnage unfold. You could try to sneak, but it's going to be very hard. Although as a DM, you could just be like, even though he senses them sneaking, he's just going to let them. Conclusion. If they come back with no proof of the involvement, the Lieutenant Match thanks them and is like, oh, okay, I guess. Cool story, bro. They bring back more information, or like Shalrath's head, or the black dragon statue, or the little thing that has no charges left on it. He'll throw them a little dinner, and Janet Proudmoore might even give you a high five. If the heroes found information about the dwarf, his family will give you gold, more so for his axe or his body, but a little bit if you just bring this ring back. If Janet Proudmoore has proof that the Dragonflight is meddling with Dalen's former soldiers, then we start getting together volunteers to lead to other adventures. There could be an entire espionage campaign within Barrymore itself to detect spies, a diplomatic campaign to have the humans, dwarves, and alliance as a whole work amongst different factions so that there's no infighting, a hack and slash adventure to Ratchet to work for Lieutenant Match, just like side quests galore, or a building. You could really start to build a campaign where you start clashing with Madagan's forces, building up to fighting Madagan himself about halfway through. And that is it. This picture of this night elf, rogue or druid or whatever, is the symbol, ladies and gents, boys and ghouls, and everything in between. We are there. We finished this book. We only have 2 Dungeons and Dragons books left. This book overstayed its welcome a little bit as far as I'm concerned, and I am ready to move on. But we did have a couple cool chapters. And regardless of all that, we did it together. And I really enjoy being with you guys and reading these episodes. I have a ball. And I look forward to seeing everyone next time. This episode in the pipe, 5x5. See everybody for the next one of Lore of Warcraft.